Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So recently I have noticed that several folks have been pretty upset with me about the fact that when I talk about the state of the industry, about the trucking market, what I don't ever mention in detail is the fact that it's election year. So today, without getting political, of course, we will talk about how an election year might affect the trucking industry. One thing is for sure, we all know it. Anytime there is an election, there is also uncertainty. Who is going to win? What does that mean? How is it going to affect all the different areas that ultimately affect us? So let's chat about it. Ready? Let's go! So, of course, the first thing we're going to start with is the consumer. When there is uncertainty of any kind, forget about the fact that it's election year, any kind of uncertainty about the future, consumers kind of stop. This means that they stop making those big purchases. And when I say big purchases, I'm not necessarily talking about cars or homes. It depends on the person, right? A big purchase might be something like a new fridge. And what happens when consumers stop spending? Well, it's like a domino effect that affects everything. Businesses stop restocking items, manufacturers stop producing as much, and of course, shippers don't have as much volume to ship. And all of this ends up trickling down to the trucking industry, where volumes either freeze or they start going down. And we already know when volumes go down, capacity is high, supply and demand, rates are not as great as we want them to be. Now, consumers are just one side of the equation. There's also the side called businesses, and businesses also will hit the pause button during an election year because of uncertainty. During this time, businesses are uncertain of what moves need to be made in order to give them the highest chance of survival or success, whatever that means to them. So, for example, if person 1 wins the election, they can implement plan A. If person 2 wins the election, they will implement plan B. So from this, I can tell you that we can forget about any big freight market changing moves until we know the results of this election. Now, of course, I have to talk about the stock market, something that I have never mentioned on this channel. The question is, being in the trucking industry, is the stock market something that we have to pay attention to? And the answer to that is yes, we really should. Traditionally, the stock market has been viewed as a predictor or an indicator of the economy and what will happen within the economy. So for example, if we see huge gains in the stock market, that is usually seen as a predictor that there is going to be economic growth. And if the stock market crashes or there are really sizable decreases there, it could predict a recession. Now, I don't know if this was proven, if it was researched, how it was researched, whether the stock market is actually predicting what is going to happen in the economy, but I can tell you this. What the stock market does, because so many people do believe that it is an indicator of the economy, what the stock market does end up doing is kind of controlling the sentiment of everybody. So if the stock market increases, the sentiment of businesses and consumers also increases. And of course, it causes them to act a certain way, much different than if the stock market were to crash tomorrow. And this sentiment alone can have a pretty sizable effect on the trucking industry. So now that we understand that an election year is just a time of absolute uncertainty, the question is, how do you keep rolling and how do you survive while everybody around seems to stop and hold their breath? Now, many of you are not going to find this answer satisfying because I know that people want this magic formula, but the reality is it's all about focusing on the things that you can control. Unfortunately, you cannot control the sentiment. Unfortunately, you cannot control the volumes in the market, but the things that you can control are your routes, your business operations, and your outlook. So starting with controlling your route planning, keep tabs on the market. Just because a lot of businesses and consumers have hit the pause button and are kind of in this wait and see trance, it doesn't mean that the whole country has stopped shipping product. As Kenny Veith, I believe his name is, of ACT Research said, he said, and I quote, "The beauty of this industry is that the US economy is entirely dependent on trucks and truck transportation. And regardless of who gets elected, we're still going to be eating, drinking, buying clothes and cars and houses the day after the election." Now, of course, the question is how much of that stuff consumers are going to buy. But at its core, this statement is absolutely true. And it's true even now. You will see that there are areas that will have more volume for your equipment type. There are going to be areas that have less volume for your equipment type. So again, keep tabs on the market and take it either day by day or week by week, whatever floats your boat, but keep tabs on what is happening. It doesn't mean that the whole country is now shut down. The next thing is having control over your business operations. And of course, here I'm talking about the outflow of money. Now, this is something that you do have control over. I'm not saying it's a comfortable thing. It is definitely far from it, but you still do have control. Let's say you have a load board that you're paying $150 for, or I got an email a few weeks ago where a person was paying some obscene amount for a load board and had several of them. So you have that load board, which is the highest tier subscription with all those bells and whistles. You can always, for the time being, while things are challenging, downgrade that subscription to something a little bit cheaper. Maybe it doesn't have all those bells and whistles, but it still has the core things that you need and is cheaper. Or maybe you have an ELD, a very fancy ELD that gives you live tracking and this and that costs you $70 per month. Well, you can always go for an ELD that maybe doesn't have live tracking, should have IFTA though, because not having IFTA on the ELD it just causes a headache and so much time wasted trying to figure out what kind of miles you traveled. But maybe it doesn't have live tracking and costs you $45 per month. Or maybe you're in a situation where you have a truck payment that is costing you an arm and a leg and it's just eating away your gross income. If your credit score allows you to do so, refinance it. Now you can refinance it in terms of interest rate. I don't know what kind of interest rate you would get right now. You can also refinance it in terms of the term of the loan, make it longer at the same or hopefully a less interest rate, where you're going to minimize those monthly expenses that are a little bit easier to swallow while things are challenging. Or maybe you have a situation, just happened this way, where all your fixed payment due dates fall within a very short time period, which is affecting your cash flow. We are in that situation. Pretty much all of our fixed payments fall within a span of a week. And this is, of course, the most stressful week every single month. In that case, you can always ask for a different due date. This is what I'm in the process of doing right now. I'm asking to stagger my due date so it's not just this one big shock to the system where all the expenses fall within 1 week. It just makes it more manageable to operate. Doesn't remove those expenses, just gives me a chance to manage my operations. So the point is, yes, there is a very big thing happening right now, right? It's election year. There is the problem with the economy, these big ideas. And we cannot and should not try to control everything that is happening, right? What we should control is what we can control, our operations. And by the way, this also goes with the outlook factor. When you're of the mindset that everything is happening to you and you have absolutely no control over anything, it gives you this feeling of doom. Once I realized that, and it was uncomfortable, but once I realized that, hey, I do have control over more things than I previously thought, at least it gave me the ability to change things, to make decisions, to change things, to kind of rectify the situation more or less. So my point is, I know that it is very hard. I'm in the same boat as you guys. Just this weekend, it literally destroyed me with the amounts and types of issues we were facing. But don't make it harder on yourself by just simply letting go of the reins and saying, you know what it is, and I can do absolutely nothing about it. In some weird way, this is something that I have learned, there is some sort of relief knowing that, hey, I actually do have control over my operations and what happens in my company. I would love to hear what you guys think. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today and watching. I hope you have a problem-free, amazing week or the rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning, and I will see you in the next video.